Okay, thank you for introduction, and let me switch to my another presentation. Okay, are you seeing my slides now? Okay, good. So good afternoon. I am very grateful for having the opportunity to introduce South Korea's social integration policy cases here in this forum. I am here to talk about two policy cases, Initial Orientation Program and Korea Immigration and Integration Program. As introduced, I am a policy researcher at Migration Research and Training Center. So before we start, I'd like to briefly introduce MRTC to you. I presume some of you know MRTC, which is the only research institute specializing in immigration policy in South Korea. MRTC was established based on the MOU between the Ministry of Justice, Gyeonggi Province, and the IOM in 2009. MRTC's mission is to support the development and implementation of immigration policy, provide education and training programs for public officials, activists, students, immigrants, and others, and to conduct joint research on international migration phenomena and policies. There are 6 major research areas MRTC seeks to cover: immigration law and administration, social integration, human rights and refugees, the relationships between immigration and economy, international cooperation on immigration, and survey of immigration trends. Social integration and refugees are my area of expertise. Now I will move on to the overview of social integration policy. There are 2 acts dictating the foundation of the social integration programs by the Korean government: the Framework Act on Treatment of Foreigners Residing in the Republic of Korea and the Immigration Act. The former states that the state and local governments may provide foreigners with education, information, and counseling services regarding basic common knowledge necessary to live in Korea. And the latter indicates the Minister of Justice may implement social integration programs for foreigners intending to get Korean citizenships or permanent residency and others. I will explain some context of this legislation. So in the mid-2000s, there was a rapid increase in foreign population, and the majority leading the growth was married migrants. The Korean government was concerned about possible tensions and conflicts between natives and immigrants. So to minimize the potential tension, the government implemented a proactive policy supporting immigrants' integration into the society. It can be interpreted as a change of perspectives from managing foreigners to integrating foreign residents, and it was somewhat easier for Koreans to accept because the majority were married migrants who were members of Korean families. So this new policy perspective aimed to support foreign residents' settlement and cultural adjustment. And to do so, it launched government-led education programs for improving Korean communication skills and understanding of Korean society. There are 2 major social integration programs: Initial Orientation Program and Social Integration Program. As its name suggests, initial orientation is orientation for newcomers, and it was implemented in 2009. Any immigrants who are planning to stay in Korea over 90 days can take initial orientation program, but it is mandatory for certain visa holders. Its contents include the introduction of foreign registration, basic Korean law and order, and information of daily life. it offered slightly tailored information by visa types. And for social integration program, the program's name is Korea Immigration and Integration Program, KIIP. KIIP delivers Korean language and cultural education programs and also includes civic education, local participation, and mentoring. This program was also implemented in 2009, and it is mandatory for naturalization. So this graph shows you the number of participants of social integration programs. For KIIP, there was a gradual increase of the participants' numbers until before the COVID-19 pandemic, and the number is recovering now. On the other hand, for the initial orientation program, there was a rapid increase at some point, but it is decreasing now. So since the outbreak of COVID-19, the participating numbers are very low. Now I will explain two programs in more detail, and we'll start from the initial orientation program. The original name of the initial orientation program was Happy Start Program, and it was for newly arrived married migrants. It expanded its target group from married migrants to all new immigrants in 2013. And it is generally recommended to take the course before foreign registration, but it is okay to take it after registration. Its budget in 2022 was about 1,000 million Korean won. As I mentioned earlier, it is mostly voluntary, but it is mandatory for 3 visa groups: work and visit visa, which is for ethnic Koreans, hotel and adult entertainment visa, and marriage migrant visa from 7 countries. Program participation, and including its guidebook, is free of charge, and the guidebook is translated into 13 languages. By taking initial orientation program, married migrants can be granted 2 years stay period instead of 1 year, so it is quite a longer period. For other visas, their times taken for the initial orientation program can be counted as KIIP hours. To be a qualified institute to run the initial orientation program, an institute must offer education programs for immigrants regularly and have enough lecture rooms and qualified lecturers. There were 142 participating institutions in 2022, and most of them were immigrant support centers or universities having international students. The Ministry of Justice assigned universities and MRTC for screening and training lecturers. To be a qualified Korean-speaking lecturer, it requires 1 year lecture experience with immigration-related laws, and the number of current lecturers are 339. Qualifications for foreign language-speaking lecturers vary, so I cannot explain everything here. There are foreign language speaking lecturers in 12 languages, and the numbers of those lecturers you can see from this slide. A course is delivered in Korean or a foreign language of the majority participant use. And if the course is delivered in Korean, up to 2 immigrant mentors can be assigned as translators in the course. Now this table presents the types of courses and their contents. Common content across all the courses are basic law and order, information on foreign registration, change of immigration status at KIIP, and daily life information. For international students, they will be introduced to career pathways and campus life. For hotel and adult entertainment visa holders, they will learn about the human rights protection systems. Married migrants will get education about family relations and prevention of family violence. Children of immigrant parents will be introduced to Korean education systems and youth programs. And ethnic Koreans will learn how to change their immigration status for ethnic Koreans. Let's move on to KIIP. Similar to the initial orientation program, originally KIIP was also for married migrants. So it is an expansion of Korean language program for married migrants. It initially targeted applicants of naturalization. So by taking KIIP, one could get exemption of evaluation or interview. Later, the target group was expanded to all migrants, not just those naturalization applicants, based on the notion that social integration should be pursued without discrimination by immigration status. So now anybody can take this KIIP, but completing the highest level or passing that level test is required for naturalization. Taking courses are free of charge, but textbooks which are standardized by the Ministry of Justice are available for purchase. And unlike the initial orientation program, KIIP courses are not tailored by immigration status. The budget for KIIP in 2022 was approximately 10,000 million Korean won. And there are 340 participating institutions, and their qualifications are quite similar or as the same to the initial orientation program requirements. So for the regular KIIP programs, there are two parts: Korean language and Korean culture, and understanding of Korean society. And I will explain them more in the next slide. But to be a qualified Korean language and Korean culture lecturer, they should have some sort of qualification related to their ability to teach in Korean language courses. And to be understanding Korean society lecturers, one must have a certification for social integration educators. Now these tables, you can see about the regular programs. So regular programs have two categories: Korean language and Korean culture, which is from level 0 to level 4, and understanding of Korean society, which is level 5. Korean language and Korean culture is mostly about learning Korean languages, and it has some pieces of cultural information, which is presented at the bottom row of this table. For understanding of Korean society, it does not provide Korean language course, but it is all about some Korean society systems. For Korean language and Korean culture part, you can see the information at the bottom, which is called about culture and information. And this information is usually presented at the end of each chapter of the level textbooks. And the content is from greetings and table manners to some immigration support centers or population policy. For the level 5, the information is more advanced and for a deeper understanding of the Korean society, because the level 5 is for those who apply for green card or permanent residency or naturalization. In addition to these regular programs, there are special programs which consist of civic education, local participation, and mentoring. Civic education programs are offered by 5 government cooperating agencies. And the programs are law for daily life, consumer education, financial education, crime prevention, and disaster and safety. Local governments can provide local participation courses such as field trips, cultural activities, or volunteering activities. And lectures by immigrant mentors about social adjustment are also part of these special programs. So as you saw, Korean language and culture courses include culture and information section in each chapter, but Korean language part also reflects some social skills or daily life skills in Korean in each section. And at the end of the course, one should take the level test. And if immigrants fail to pass the level test, they should retake the course. And hours taken by special programs like civic education, they can be transferred to regular education hours. But special programs are not opened on a regular basis by cooperating agencies. And in my opinion, there are some room for improvements in these programs, and I will start from the initial orientation programs. The program participants cannot enroll the initial orientation course based on their language preference, because the lecture language is decided by the majority of participants' language used after the enrollment is completed. But when we think about who are these participants, they are newcomers who may not equip necessary Korean language skills to understand this course content. So the government should provide courses by language groups, and to do that, they need to train lecturers with immigration background, and it is an ongoing process now. Secondly, the contents do not reflect local community characteristics because the content is developed by the central government. And it is really ironic because the initial orientation program is governed by the central government is quite the significant, how can I say, the significant advantage of this program. But because it is designed only by the central government, it cannot provide information about the real community that these newcomers will settle down. So in the content, it should include information about local community context and settlement. So there should be some flexibility about how to develop these programs. And finally, the geographic distributions of participating institutions are not sufficient. So for example, immigrants in remote areas, they require more opportunities to register for this initial orientation program, but it is not really available currently. So when the government select the participating centers and courses, there should be some consideration of the population size by immigration status and sub-regions. And for KIIP, I personally think that the civic education provided by the government agencies are really quality information for immigrants. But the civic education directly offered by these agencies are available only on weekdays. These corporate agencies, it will be really great if they open online or hybrid courses or train regular KIIP program lecturers for covering the civic education content. And some of these agencies, they have already started these training programs. And secondly, the contents of the cultural information section then might not be really relevant to the needs of immigrants at that course level. So as an example, in level 3, the information provided is about the cell phone services, and the immigrants who are taking the level 3 are likely to know a lot about cell phone services. So that is quite irrelevant information to them. So the contents of KIIP, the information pieces, should reflect the standard characteristics of immigrants at each level, such as their time staying in Korea or social roles or some other contexts. And finally, the feedbacks from participants are not a criterion of institution selection. But some participants, they actually provide their feedbacks to the institutions. So if these feedbacks from participants are considered as part of the selection criterion, then the offering institutions will deliver more immigrant-friendly courses to them, and it will have a greater impact on immigrant social integration. I will wrap up my presentation here. Thank you so much for your time and attention.